Hello and welcome for the 5th episode. Yes, 5th episode. We are already half through the first series of this not yet have a name podcast. Today's topic is failures. So let's do this. And you only fail because you are doing something. So this is the first thing we need to set in mind for any situation that we may occur that is not according with our expectations. So the topic here is, failures. I'm not trying to teach anyone how to succeed. Okay, this is not the purpose, but I would like to share with you, what is the probably a nicer mindset while handling with failures. You already know that you are only fail if you set yourself through any kind of process or any kind of activity that you want to achieve a certain goal. Or even the goal may not be there. It doesn't matter. Okay, so if you are set in motion, you are likely to succeed as well as fail. And for example, this podcast. This podcast has no intention to be more than 10 people listening. And I really don't care if this podcast succeeds or fails. Actually, I have no goal for failure or succeed on this podcast. One of the teachings of Karma Yoga is we need to be detached from the fruition of our labor, meaning succeeding and failure are both imposters on the perspective of Karma Yoga. We are doing a certain activity for the process or for the benefit of others. So meaning if you fail or you succeed really doesn't matter. What does matter is whatever you're trying to do or achieve, you are setting or you're putting yourself entirely on the process or on the tasks required to achieve a certain fruit or objective. It doesn't matter the result. The result is just a byproduct, and whatever happens, you need to be detached from the end result. This can be interpreted in a way that or you are going through the process, and it's the process that actually is the fruition and not exactly the end result. And for example, this podcast, I'm really not expecting this podcast to be listened for more than 10 people, but the fact I'm doing this, I'm improving my communication skills. And believe me, talking to a microphone and trying to say something in improvised way. Today, for example, compared with my first episode, I had a note with the topics I want to talk to, and today I'm doing completely freestyle. Is the objective that I told to myself how I want to do this podcast. I don't want to have a script. I don't want to have bullet points whatsoever. I just want to say the things on a foreign language that comes up in my mind. So for this example of this podcast, this personal example, my objective, my karma here is just the process of doing this. Of course, I need to learn other skills, for example, how to handle the audio, which is still a struggle for me, but this is a side thing. The main objective for me is to improve my communication skills. Only with the process of it, I know that I will improve. So in a way, I'm completely detached of the end result of this podcast. So if I improve my communication skills, nice. If I don't improve my communication skills, it's okay. If I am the next Joe Rogan, I really don't care. If I'm continue to be the actor that everybody knows and do this silly thing sometimes, it's also okay. So in that perspective, I just continue to be the same person. My objectives continue to be the same. The end result really doesn't matter. So I'm going through the process. But to be honest, giving this podcast as an example is way too easy because it's a typical example of only by the process it's achievable something, or you're trying to achieve something by the process, not the end result. So imagine that you are trying to do a task and you fail miserably, and this is the end result that actually matters, not the process. So another thing that Karma Yoga teaches is basically everything is perspective. So what is the benefit, or what is the end result that you're trying to do? Probably is a very selfish one. And if you are trying to do anything selfish, you are taking too personal the result of that labor, whatever that is. So if you are setting a goal, imagine changing jobs to earn more money, or trying to find this really nice restaurant for you and your girlfriend or boyfriend, and it fails miserable. The problem is not the failure itself, it's the perspective that you set in that activity. So of course I'm putting here really simple examples because it's easier to explain. But for example, imagine that you are on your anniversary with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you are setting up a restaurant. Everything on your mind is great, but for some reason, when you arrive there, the service is really bad. The food is so bad, and you got a really good feedback from the restaurant, and even tried before going there with your significant other. But even though it failed miserable, it failed only on the perspective that the restaurant was good. But what was really the intent? The intent was for you to have a good time with your significant other. It's not about the restaurant. So already having a good time with somebody else is already less selfish, is in a way as objective. So even though the restaurant was really poor in terms of service, in terms of food, or whatever happened on that specific moment, you can turn around the event if you keep your mindset of, I want to have a good time no matter what. This is the objective, or this is the fruition of my labor. So even if things fail, it can be actually funny. So the things that happen can set in motion a series of jokes, some flirting, some whatever, to make the things going around in a way that was actually a nice story to tell others eventually, to tell your friends, to your family, hey, I went to do this anniversary dinner or lunch, and this happened, and we laughed so much because of it, okay? And after we went for an ice cream or whatever, and actually was the best part of our date, for example. So on that sense, it's not you that failed. Okay, that you choose poorly a restaurant, everything failed because you don't found a nice place for you and the other person to be together and so on. It's just a restaurant. Okay, so you really wanted to have a nice time with the other. So if you push the action, the end result from you for the benefit of others, it's like a weight that simply comes off from it. Okay, it's actually a way for you to just have some distance from the end result, and whatever happens, you have more a mentality or emotional availability to try to be water and go around the situations that happens around you. So in that perspective, handling with failure is simply to try to detach from it. Okay, it's easier said than done, I understand. But with practice, and certainly with the change of perspective, it can help you to manipulate yourself in a way that you can do actions not for your benefit, but for the benefit of others. For example, this podcast, I'm doing it just for fun, which has a side effect of improving my communication skills. But imagine if I set this on internet and it stays there for 1 year or whatever, and there is one person that listened to an episode of one of these videos, And whatever I told on that episode was so important for that person, this entirety podcast was worth it already. And I might not even know that person, which is quite the funniest part of all. So it doesn't matter how many subscribers, how many listeners are happening on this podcast. If whatever I say here can help someone eventually later on in the future, is already a nice thing. So it's not about the succeeding of this podcast, but the benefit that might come of if I put a random episode of a random guy saying random things and just putting yoga things on it, and that thing actually helps someone, or try to give information to the person to find ways to help that person on a given aspect, is already a very nice thing. As a reminder, both succeeding and failure are imposters on the perspective of karma yoga. It really doesn't matter. Just try to do your best on a given task and hope that task can help others as well. Okay, the fruition of that task can help others. And if it works, nice. If it doesn't work, just move on. But I understand this is way easier said than done. For example, I don't want to go into many details, but on the past weeks I have been improving other areas of my life in a way that I was researching, I was seeing a lot of videos on YouTube, I was learning how to do a certain set of tasks, and I managed to put that new skills that I have learned on the past weeks into practice with moderate results, even though it was a completely selfish end result. So I'm not going into details, but was really selfish in a way that I improve that skills and the way that I was learning a completely subset of skills. And the end results, not the end results, but the side results that I was having was quite nice. It's like you want to launch a rocket into space. So I don't know if you know how is the process, but basically you put a rocket on a thingy and you do static fires, right? You don't launch the rocket. You are just testing the engines, and you do static fires. And with pressure testing, with static fires that the rocket works. So when the time comes, you want to launch the rocket. So what happened with me was I was weeks and weeks how to learn how to do the rocket. I made my pressure tests. I made my static fires. Everything was operational. When I found an opportunity to launch my rocket, it failed miserably. It didn't even got out of the floor. Okay? And this is still pending in my head, this failure that I had recently. And the way that I'm trying to approach it is I'm trying to put that failure outside of me, in a sense that was a selfish act, completely selfish act, only for my benefit. And I'm trying to change the perspective that I did my best. I put all my skills into work. If my rocket didn't launch, it's not my problem anymore. I tried my best. I have a very nice rocket. No puns intended. And the rocket simply didn't go into the sky. So it's not my problem. It's the sky problem. I'm pretty good doing my rocketing. In my perspective, I'm pretty good, and I know what my abilities are. So if the sky doesn't want my rocket, this is so funny as an analogy. If the sky doesn't want my rocket, it's not my problem anymore. So I did my best, and I will move on with trying to improve with new engines, new static fire, new pressure tests, and let's see what happens. And from now on, I think I'm calling this podcast The Rocket's Way. And that's why a name was invented below the 50 minutes times mark. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I am, and have fun, people.